The first sign that something extraordinary was about to happen came with the thunder of rotor blades tearing through the quiet afternoon sky, a sound so fierce it rattled windows and sent nurses rushing to the corridors. Until that moment, the new nurse no one noticed had been standing alone at the end of the hallway, head lowered, hands trembling, quietly preparing medications for patients who barely knew her name. In seconds, the calm routine of the small hospital in rural Montana shattered, and a Navy helicopter descended toward the emergency landing zone, carrying a wounded Navy SEAL whose survival depended on a team that had already written the quiet nurse off as invisible. Before the story unfolds any further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of unseen hearts, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps stories like this reach people who need them most. Her name was Hannah Carter, a 24-year-old nurse fresh out of training, recently transferred to a hospital where everyone already had their circles, friendships, and assumptions. Hannah spoke softly, moved gently, and kept her eyes lowered. In a place where loud confidence ruled, her calm presence was mistaken for weakness. The older nurses rarely assigned her critical cases, often giving her the simplest tasks, while the doctors barely acknowledged her input. She endured it quietly, reminding herself that she had not come here to be seen, but to serve. Every night, she prayed over her patients and whispered words of encouragement to those who lay alone, unseen just like her. Hannah's journey to this hospital had not been easy. Raised in a small Christian home in Kansas, she had watched her mother battle illness for years. Hospitals had become both her childhood playground and her place of heartbreak. She learned early that compassion was not optional, it was survival. After her mother passed, Hannah promised herself she would become the kind of nurse who noticed the forgotten and comforted the broken. But ideals often met harsh reality. At this hospital, she was treated like a shadow, walking through bright halls unnoticed. On that day, the emergency alert echoed through the building, calling for immediate trauma response. A Navy SEAL named Matthew Reynolds had been critically injured during a classified training exercise. Severe internal bleeding, traumatic head injury, and dangerously low oxygen levels left little room for error. As the trauma team assembled, tension gripped the room. Everyone knew the stakes. A man who had survived countless combat missions was now hanging by a thread. The helicopter landed, and the hospital exploded into motion. Doctors rushed, nurses prepared surgical equipment, and administrators barked orders. Hannah stood frozen for a second, watching the chaos unfold. Her instincts screamed to act, but her past experiences told her to stay back. Still, something deep within her stirred, a quiet fire that refused to be silenced. She stepped forward, offering to assist. A senior nurse dismissed her, assigning her to monitor vitals in the recovery bay, far from the operating room. Hannah nodded, swallowing her disappointment. As Matthew was wheeled past her, she caught a glimpse of his face, pale and bruised, lips slightly parted as machines forced oxygen into his lungs. Something about his condition unsettled her. Years of observing subtle changes in patients had sharpened her intuition. She sensed that something critical was being overlooked. While preparing the recovery area, she noticed fluctuations in his oxygen saturation readings transmitted to the monitors nearby. They dipped dangerously low for brief seconds, then stabilized, only to dip again. The pattern reminded her of a rare condition she had studied but had never seen in real life. Hannah hesitated, knowing the risk of speaking up. But she remembered her promise to never ignore the vulnerable. She approached the attending physician, carefully explaining her observation. The doctor brushed her off, attributing the readings to stress and trauma. Humiliated, Hannah stepped back, but she could not shake the feeling that time was slipping away. Minutes later, Matthew's condition deteriorated rapidly. Alarms blared as his oxygen levels plummeted. The operating room erupted into frantic motion. Doctors scrambled to identify the cause, while nurses adjusted machines and administered emergency medications. In that chaos, Hannah's mind stayed eerily calm. She recognized the signs of an undetected airway complication combined with internal swelling, a deadly combination that required immediate intervention. Without waiting for permission, she rushed in, recalibrated the oxygen delivery system, repositioned his airway support, and signaled the team to prepare for a rapid surgical adjustment. For a moment, everyone stared at her in shock. Then the monitors began to stabilize. Oxygen levels rose. Heart rate steadied. The room fell silent as relief swept through the team. The surgeon later confirmed that Hannah's instincts had saved precious minutes that meant the difference between life and death. Word of her action spread quickly through the hospital. The quiet nurse who had been ignored was suddenly the center of attention. But Hannah did not feel victorious. Instead, she felt overwhelmed. When she finally stepped outside for air, she broke down, tears streaming down her face. The weight of responsibility, fear, and years of feeling invisible crashed over her. She whispered a prayer of gratitude, asking for strength to continue serving with humility. Over the next days, Matthew's recovery astonished everyone. Against all odds, he regained consciousness, slowly opening his eyes to the sterile white ceiling above. Though heavily medicated, he was told about the young nurse who had saved his life. He requested to see her. When Hannah entered his room, she felt nervous, unsure how to face a man hailed as a hero. Matthew, weak but alert, reached for her hand and thanked her with a sincerity that pierced her heart. His gratitude was not loud or dramatic, but deep and steady, the kind that stays with you forever. From that moment on, the hospital changed. Doctors sought Hannah's input. Nurses included her in critical decisions. But more importantly, patients began requesting her. They said she listened. She cared. She noticed their pain. Hannah remained the same gentle soul she had always been, refusing to let recognition alter her purpose. Months later, a formal ceremony was held at the hospital. Navy officers arrived, presenting Hannah with a medal of civilian valor. The helicopter returned, this time not in desperation, but in honor. As the rotor blades roared overhead, Hannah stood among her colleagues, tears in her eyes, humbled by the journey that had brought her here. Yet her greatest reward came in quieter moments. It was in the soft thank yous from patients, the relieved smiles of families, and the peaceful knowing that she had fulfilled her calling. She learned that invisibility does not mean insignificance, and that quiet strength often changes the world in the loudest ways. Near the end of this story, if it touched your heart, if it reminded you of someone who feels unseen, take a moment to like this video, share it, and leave a heartfelt comment. Your engagement helps these messages of hope reach more lives. And before we end, please comment the word kindness below to show your support for those who serve quietly every day. Hannah continued her work with renewed purpose, never forgetting the days when she stood unnoticed in the hallway. Those memories kept her grounded, reminding her to see the invisible, to hear the unheard, and to stand for those too afraid to speak. And somewhere in the skies above, the echo of a Navy helicopter would forever remind her that sometimes, the greatest miracles arrive when we least expect them, carried on the wings of faith, courage, and compassion. If this story moved you, please engage with the video and let others experience this message of hope. Because somewhere, right now, a quiet soul is waiting to be seen.